Hi, I'm Sam Smith. Grab a stool. The conversation is about to begin on App State's Sports Bar. Hi again, everybody, and thanks for joining us. Grab a stool, as we said, pull up a chair because the conversation is about to begin, and we've got a lot to cover. We've got our sweet tea here. We have our panel is all ready to go, as Aston, Chris, and also Travis are here, and we're going to talk, first of all, about the National Hockey League. And again, the Blackhawks winning 3 times in the last 6 years. I don't think anybody was really overly surprised, gang, when they won, but Tampa Bay, third period never seemed to be a good period for them against the Blackhawks. Was there any reason for that, Chris?
I think it has to come down to the defense of the Chicago Blackhawks. I mean, they, like I said from the start, that the experience that they have, they know when to close it out and when to come together and slow the game down. And that's exactly what they did for Tampa Bay. I will say that Tampa Bay did put the pressure on, but when it really counted, the defense came up big. And you know, I don't want to brag on myself a little bit, but somebody on this panel did call the Patrick Kane final goal to clinch the Stanley Cup. Just saying. But anyways, I think it was mostly defense.
Yeah.
Well, Duncan Keith, of course, got the MVP, and of course he got the first goal, which technically was the winning goal. But by the way, Tampa Bay got the last laugh. They sent one of the Florida thunderstorms up and rained on their parade.
Yeah, absolutely. I did see that. Good
hockey series, though, with the Blackhawks over
yeah, definitely. I think it came down a lot to the fact that, you know, the Blackhawks were lightning out. I mean, they kept on them hard. They kept going, and I think that they just tired them out, and that's what you've got to do when you've got the defense that they do. You have to keep working on the offense until they don't have the energy to make the big plays and to, you know, do the breakaways and anything like that. You have to work with what you've got, and I think they did a really good job of taking the team that they had and, you know, making something with them.
You know, Travis, one of the things is Corey Crawford, the goaltender for the Blackhawks, actually had a little up and down series, so to speak, but he was fairly solid in the last couple of games, I thought.
He was. I totally agree, and I feel like for the Blackhawks as a team, you know, you don't win championships by accident. The Blackhawks are a veteran team, as you mentioned, that makes 3 out of the last 6 years, and they ran into a Tampa Bay team who very talented, but I'm not sure if they were ready for that stage during that series.
And what you found out, if somebody wins a championship, all of a sudden we look at free agency and people changing teams. The Blackhawks haven't done that over the last few years, thus they've had great success. Is this a team that now says, hey, we still want to stay intact, or guys saying, hey, I can make a little more money by going to LA, to the Kings, or to Washington or wherever? Are we going to see that happening in the National Hockey League?
I would say in hockey more than any other sport, you don't see that as much. Guys simply chasing money. It's very few and far between. I mean, you do see teams end up trading guys and dumping guys on their end, but players typically tend to stay together. And when you look at the Blackhawks, one thing I think that's really made them so dominant during the free agency era, if you will, is the fact that they locked up the guys that they knew were going to be the core pieces on their team. And that's Jonathan Toews, Patrick Kane. They just signed those guys to extensions, 8-year deals before this season. Mm-hmm. So if nothing else, they've got those guys, and Duncan Keith is on a deal for a few more years. And those are the main guys that they can build around, and they'll help bring other guys that you are replacing on the wings and things like that up to speed relatively quickly.
Did we get some good television ratings for on campus at ASU? I mean, were people watching the hockey series going on the campus? Did you get a feel that they were watching a little bit?
I mean, honestly, I think that at least for kids who are on campus right now, the majority of us who are still here are taking summer classes, which, with as rigorous as they are, I mean, I barely have time to watch stuff. So I don't think people would as much as they were, you know, in the regular school year, you know, regular off summer. But I think that there's still a decent amount of people who care about it. But it's hard, especially when the teams are from further away too. You know, it's not the Hurricanes playing the Stanley Cup or anything like that. It's teams that people may, by extension, like, you know, oh, my parents are from there, my family's from there, whatnot. But I think that the excitement was definitely less than what it could be if it was a team that people had a little more care about.
We have a man on our panel, certainly, that knows a little about the draft coming up on the 26th, which is Friday. And I understand there's going to be some guys that, again, with those names about this long for the announcers to try to come up with. But again, what kind of drafts are going to be in the National Hockey League?
Well, thankfully, the two guys I want to talk about, simple names at least, and that's Connor McDavid and Jack Eichel. And Jack Eichel is the U.S., he's expected to be the next U.S. captain. He's 18 years old right now, and he's projected to go go second overall to my Buffalo Sabres, which gives me a little bit of extra interest. And he's a solid forward. His projection, honestly, from everything I've seen, has been he's supposed to be the next Jonathan Taves. So from that aspect, that's how he plays. But even more better than him, and what made me sad when the Buffalo lost the draft lottery, was Connor McDavid. And he's kind of the main prize for all of hockey right now. This is a guy who's drawn comparisons to Wayne Gretzky. People talked about that with Sidney Crosby, but he's getting higher reviews than Crosby at this point in the game. And so I know there's a lot of shoes to fill there. You don't just throw out the great one's name in hockey without showing something, though. So it's going to be exciting to see these two guys come in, and 5, 6, 7 years from now, these may be the captains on the Olympic squads.
You're still going to get some good collegiates. I do Big Ten hockey. There's some kids that I've named they're coming out, and there's going to be some youngsters that'll make that, and certainly a majority of them are Canadians. Yeah. So it should be a very, very interesting draft coming up on Friday, and we'll find out there. But again, the Blackhawks are the Kings, and of course winning 3 of the last 6 years in the National Hockey League, beating Tampa Bay. But again, as my father-in-law down in Tampa Bay said, we gave them a whale of a series, and they certainly did, There was another series that ended up, and by the way, our panel all picked the Blackhawks. So we just to let that all know, I kind of penciled that in here. So it all picked the Blackhawks. We varied from 5 to 6 games, winning 6, so we were all pretty well on it. The NBA, I think we pretty well stayed with maybe Golden State, but we may have had a dissenter with Cleveland along the way. But Golden State, I thought the last 3 games just they turned it up a notch. And LeBron James, bless his heart, I mean, there's just so much he can put on his back and carry. But that was a great series for him to lose.
Yeah, it was a great series for him, and I think it ended up that he was battling a ton of injuries on his team. He was battling, being guarded by Iguodala, and who ended up being the MVP overall. And I think that it ended up that a team can't be one person. I think that's why in the end we saw Golden State come home with the win, because it was LeBron versus a team. And if it was LeBron and a few other people versus a team, I think we would have had a different series. But as one person, you can't put everything on your shoulders. You can't handle all of these people and all of these amazing players by yourself. And I think that it just came down to there was too much pressure for him to handle as one person.
By the way, Aston is not suffering an injury now for trying to block out LeBron, but again, broke her arm, and she's a trooper being with us today. Thank you very much.
Oh, no problem.
Fellas, what about Golden State? Iguodala's the MVP, but let's face it, the Splash Brothers, particularly with Curry, and I'll be honest with you, I think Del Curry, the father of Stephen Curry, is enjoying this more than anyone. I mean, he's at the parade. He's everywhere, it seems like. But that was a good series for Golden State.
Absolutely. And so is Michael Thompson, Klay Thompson's father. He said that this championship was more important to him than the 2 victories that he had as a Laker in his career. So that's pretty interesting as well. Golden State has a lot to look forward to going forward, too, because while it was a great series, I kind of think this may be a finals rematch next year. With the West, it's kind of hard to say. You never really know, because teams are so talented in the West that the 8 seed could very well end up being in the championship. But these are teams that are both built for the future. Golden State has some decisions to make with David Lee and Andrew Bogut and deciding how they're going to go with there. But the main guys that they need to lock up are Draymond Green, and they've shown that they are looking to do that. And so when you have Draymond Green, Klay Thompson, and obviously Steph Curry, you've got a good future ahead of you. And I see them being a team that's consistently in the finals for the next few years.
Being a broadcaster in the National Basketball Association for 12 years with San Antonio, I saw the West a great deal. And I always say that they're the scoring conference, while in the East it's a defensive conference. But I think Golden State showed the other side of that coin as well. And Travis, I thought their defense, Iguodala coming up, he didn't shut down LeBron, but at least he frustrated him and forced him so hard to play. He ran out of gas, literally.
Yeah, as LeBron says, he's the best player in the world, which, in my opinion, he is the best player in the world. But you're right, Iguodala, he did just enough to keep him frustrated, because with LeBron in this series, he's doing everything. He's the scorer, he's the rebounder, he's the assist man. So just if you can do anything to slow him down, you are the finals MVP if you can slow that man down. Looking at Golden State, I see Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, and Iguodala. Those are the 3 pieces that, LeBron thought he was going to have, with Kyrie and Kevin Love, having that those extra scores, that extra help. So I look at this series and say, for those people who are always, worried about legacy, particularly LeBron's legacy, that's a huge shocking point. I look at this and say, no skin off LeBron. This was an excellent series that, if not for him playing at the level he was, this they get swept.
You know, I thought it was interesting that the bookies, so to speak, out in Las Vegas have already picked Cleveland as the favorite to win the NBA for next year. I thought it was a rather interesting pick, particularly with Golden State having so many pieces coming back as well, if indeed they all do come back.
Yeah, I think for Cleveland, though, what they saw was LeBron reach a level that, honestly, the only person I can think to compare it to, and it was way before my time, but having seen the old highlights, is Oscar Robertson. I mean, he dominated each game. I mean, he averaged a triple-double in the series, and I read somewhere he accounted for 62% of all Cleveland scoring in the entire series. So when you consider that with the fact that you're about to bring back Kyrie Irving, who is one of the most prolific scorers in the game, still got to round out his defensive game, but he's prolific. And the more I'm reading is that Kevin Love is going to be back as well. They still want to offer him a max contract. It's hard to not, because that's a big three that LeBron played without and almost won a finals. So when you throw him back in the mix, it's hard to pick against him, in my opinion.
Irving handling the ball, which is good. He gets the ball, and that takes it out, because LeBron actually played a point forward, if you want to get down to it. He brought the ball up a lot. But then you had Love, who can shoot the threes and automatically opens up the inside. So you're right, that three. And when you take a look at championships in the NBA, they're always talking about three players. If you get the big three, you're going to win. I mean, looked at Miami when LeBron was there. They did it there. Look at Boston when they were in their heyday. San Antonio had their big three. So it goes on and on and on. If you get the three players, I worked for a coach by the name of Stan Albeck in San Antonio, and he said, the biggest players on my team are my 7th and 8th players. And I said, what about those starting 5? And he said, we know they're going to play. It's that 6th, 7th, and 8th guys coming off the bench who are going to help us win games. And I would agree that helped this series as well. Sure, all 5s were head-to-head, but I thought the bench player came out very well. The draft's coming up for them on Thursday. Any idea on what's going to happen? Minnesota's got the first pick. Anybody in particular that they're looking at?
I've got Towns for first from Kentucky. I just think that he kind of meshes with what they've been doing in the past and what they're trying to get to, in the future and all of that. I think that he fits in really well with what they're trying to be, and I don't see them going in another direction, which seems kind of odd because, in a draft, the first pick can, you got 2 or 3 guys who are really good. But I think from all that I've read and what I've seen them talk about, I really think that if it's not him, I would be shocked. I think that that's what they've got.
And I think, too, the reason Karl Anthony Towns to Minnesota makes so much sense is his athleticism from the center position. This is a guy who has a well-rounded defensive game, which I think is what hurts Jahlil Okafor. And in the NBA, defense is really what matters. I mean, you can have an amazing offensive ability, and Jahlil Okafor dominated the college game in the post, but when you get into the league and you're having to go against big centers like DeMarcus Cousins, Andre Drummond, these large guys, your ability to dominate in the post is inevitably going to go down. And so you have to be able to round out your game with the defensive side, and that's what Towns brings that Okafor is going to have to work on. I'm not going to say that long-term Okafor is necessarily always going to be that number 2 guy to Towns, but from the start, he's got a lot more to work on in his game than Karl Anthony Towns.
You talk about big guys coming in with the wingspan of 7 or 8 feet and playing defense. You can't teach that. They're either going to have it or they're not going to have it. So it should be interesting. That comes up on Thursday, then the National Hockey League on Friday. So there's some big news to be made, and I'm sure we'll talk about it coming up next Monday. We return on the Sports Bar. Women's soccer going on up in Canada. It looks now with Australia knocking off Brazil. Kind of a shock in the 80th minute of that game, and they beat them 1-0. Does the U.S. have an easier road? They got to go through Colombia tonight. Is this going to be an easier road for them getting into the semis? Whatever.
Oh, definitely. And I think that was the entire point of having the strategic groupings this year instead of the random groupings that they do for the men's, is that they wanted to set up these big games between people. And because of that, the U.S. ended up in an easier group, and they ended up with these people that, they're not playing anyone in the top 10. They're not until they get a little further along, until the semifinals. So I think that they did get an easier road, and they got to take advantage of that because you've got Alex Morgan coming back from injury, slowly putting in more game time. But, they need that time to kind of get everyone back into their, into the swing of things to really get going. And so I think they need to focus now on, really becoming a cohesive group, especially in the last third, because, they need to become this team that can beat the top 10 teams when they get there because they've gotten this easy road. They need to take advantage of what they've been given and show that, we beat the easy teams, now we can beat the real opponents that we've been given.
Travis, one of the things about watching this women's team is that we know the stars, but all of a sudden there's kind of like that unknown commodity that comes up. But the stars are the ones that are they're really producing right now for the U.S. women. And certainly that's got to be a big plus for this U.S. women soccer team.
Absolutely. I thought Rapinoe so far in this World Cup has had a terrific World Cup. Without her, I think we may have taken a loss in the group stage because there was games where she was the only one that could get it going. She was the only one that could find those balls and, to those passes that aren't, just there that you can easily see, little chips, through balls. But I think it's important that Abby Wambach and Morgan get on the same page. I don't feel like either of them have really been in that same kind of gel like they were in the previous World Cup. Wambach, she did score last game, but in my opinion, she didn't have the greatest of games. I felt like, and even as a team, after they scored that goal, they kind of let down. It's like, we're playing Nigeria. Let's take the foot off the brake. I will say that with all those things being said, I thought they had a pretty good group stage. You look at the teams they played. Australia, 10th in the world, I believe. They're no pushover. Sweden's right up there. Sweden is a team that has a nation that has won the World Cup once before, and Pia Sundhage is their coach, the old U.S. coach. So going forward, I think Colombia is going to be a tougher game than China or Cameroon if they're able to get through Colombia. And then after that game, if they're lucky enough to make it into the semifinals, you possibly have a U.S.-Germany/France game because they'll meet each other on the other side of the bracket. So
Is Hope Solo on her game? I mean, do we see she's really stepping up, doing the job she needs? Or
She's definitely on her game. I think that there's still a lot of controversy that's surrounding her, which, it's definitely not ruining her game on the field, but I think that there's
controversy of what?
Of the domestic violence incident
Gotcha.
between her and her, I believe, sister, half-sister, and her son. So I think that she's a little distracted. I think that you can see with her play that there's, some things that she's missing that she shouldn't be and things of that nature. I think that there's just a lot of outside forces that are taking effect, but she's still, one of the top in the world. So I don't think that it's, good. It's not changing anything, but it's definitely noticeable.
U.S. over Colombia? People like that tonight?
Yeah.
I would say Colombia's missing their goalkeeper, who has played terrific to this point. So she won't be available. I'm looking for Wambach and Morgan to finally get it together and play like the cohesive team that I know they can be.
By the way, that's 8 o'clock tonight. It'll be on Fox Sports 1. And they, of course, will be there. And we'll see how the U.S. women's soccer team does. Moving on to another one, and speaking of Fox Sports 1, who covered the United States Open for the first time, I would have preferred that maybe they kind of cut their teeth on maybe a lesser event than the U.S. Open. I didn't think the Fox coverage was all that good. No. And as a matter of fact, Joe Buck in the booth, he's great in football. He does some other things, but golf, he's not a good golfer.
He's a baseball guy.
He's just too much. He's too much in your face. I thought Greg Norman did a decent job, but I thought he was a little bit too wordy. I think the people on the course were getting better. As a matter of fact, the third and fourth rounds, I thought they got very good. Second thing I liked about them is the fact I like the tracer. When they're hitting the ball off the tee, it shows you where they're going to hit it.
Yes.
Secondly, also, I like the audio. They had, the announcers really didn't have to say anything. They had these guys with the nice parabolic mics, and they're right there, and the two guys, the caddies and the players. So from the standpoint of that, I thought there were some pluses and minuses for that. And then we'll get to the real nut and some bolts of it. As far as TV coverage is concerned, any comments on what you saw that you liked or didn't like?
It's, like you mentioned, I liked having the close coverage, you know what I'm saying? I want to hear what's going on between the golfers and their caddies and stuff, because that's the more behind the scenes stuff with the game that you don't get a lot of coverage on an ESPN when you're just looking at highlights. And that's what's interesting to me, is hearing that, the actual X's and O's of it, if you will.
Well, and definitely, I think the screen follow of the ball was helpful, at least for me. I don't have the best eyesight in the world, and I find that I'm like, already hit it. Well, okay, where did it? Okay, oh, there it is. All right, past it. Oh, now it's gone again. So it's nice to have that, because at least you kind of get an idea of until the next shot, and you're like, okay, so it landed. How did it get there? Because sometimes I look at it, I'm like, I thought it was going that. Okay, and so it was helpful from a watching perspective.
Standpoint of I being a golfer myself, I like to know from certain distance what clubs are hitting. I didn't think we heard enough of that. Certainly what they hit it and what we hit, it's an apple and an orange. But nonetheless, I would have liked to have that. Jordan Spieth comes up, wins it, -5, but Dustin Johnson, second year in a row. He shot an 81 at the U.S. Open in the final round to lose it last year. He misses an eagle putt, but then he's got a 2.5 footer and he pushes that one. I mean, and I talked to the PGA people this morning on another matter, and they're downhearted for Dustin Johnson. They're elated for Jordan, but they're really down. Your thoughts on? I mean, this is a guy that had a chance to win it with just make the putt.
It was a tough loss. I mean, it ended up that he hadn't granted fairly easy putt, especially for someone of his talent. And I think the pressure just kind of got to him. I think there was a lot on the line, and not saying he couldn't handle it, but I mean, I know that I would be freaking out for something like that. I think that even him, with as much experience as he has with that pressure, I think it was just a little too much. And I mean, it was a rough hole in general. I know that people had struggled on it, so I think that it just came down to the fact that he couldn't quite get it to where it needed to be.
I was really proud of the Texan, of course, Jordan from Dallas, and he gets a double bogey at 17. But he's got such mental strength to be 21 years of age. God bless you for your age. But this is a guy that when he hits that 3-wood and knocks it on the green, and a chance even to hit an eagle himself. I thought that was a classic shot of all times in the United States Open for him. Oosterhuizen, another guy, goes 77, 66, 66, 67. He's 13 under par in the last 3 rounds. I mean, that made some good TV for a lot of people really wanting to play. And I thought overall, I loved it. We'll talk about Tiger in a moment, but I just love seeing new faces and new people having a chance to win.
Speed is great for golf too, because people need it, especially for golf that doesn't get as much coverage as I think it should. They need an almost superstar in golf like that, and a young guy who's up and coming, because the last one we had is Tiger Woods, and look at how much ESPN can't let go of Tiger Woods. It's in every sportscast. Who are we talking about? We're not talking about the guys at the top of the boards. We're saying how bad is Tiger Woods playing at this point? They're not letting go of that, and so we need somebody like that.
Yeah, even when he's playing badly, he's at the top of all the news because we care that much. And I think that Spieth is going to be the next Tiger Woods, in that, at least in the mindset of what we're caring about, at least in the mindset of what people want to talk about, especially being so young. It's easy for us to be interested in him.
Yeah, but you won't see that transition though until Woods. I mean, as it is right now, Woods still draws the biggest galleries. Of course. I mean, people would still rather watch Tiger Woods struggle than Jordan Spieth win the whole thing. And I heard someone on ESPN radio the other day talking about this, and they compared it to, they would be like, watching Tiger Woods struggle is kind of like you going to a Bulls game and watching Michael Jordan shoot air balls from the free throw line.
Good point.
Like, that's why people are so enamored with this Woods situation, because they look at him and they're like, you were so great. They can't wrap their head around the fact that he's not anymore.
Has there ever been somebody who went from that height to that depth as far as play? I can't think of in any sport, golf, let alone golf.
And the national writers are now coming up, okay, Tiger, you've had your run, time to hang it up before you get to the senior tour. Once he gets to the senior tour, no telling what he'll shoot then. But nonetheless, I'm seeing national writers saying, first of all, he's never going to break Nicklaus's record for 18 majors. Secondly, he may not even win another major. So I'm seeing more and more that it's time to hang it up, Tiger. You've had a great run. We've enjoyed it. God bless you, but we've got some other people to watch. So it'll be fun to watch that. Alex Rodriguez, 3,000 hits. Sure, there's maybe some controversy over this and over that, but stepping up to the plate and get 3,000 hits, he's one of, 29 that have done that in all
Less
major
than 30.
baseball? Wow.
It's awesome. Not a huge all-around baseball person. I watch baseball as a sport, but I don't necessarily have a team that I really pull for. But I kind of have a soft spot for A-Rod. I really do. I think that more than anyone else who has been scrutinized over the steroid era problems, A-Rod has probably been the face of it, behind maybe Mark McGwire or a few of the past hitters like that. But A-Rod has been this era's guy when it comes to that. And to get 3,000 hits, less than 30 guys have ever done it. You can't just take steroids and become the best player. It doesn't work like that. You still have to be there day in and day out hitting and working on your game. And it shows when he's breaking these milestones. And I thought it was really cool that he hit it on a home run, just like Derek Jeter did when Derek Jeter broke 3,000 hits. I think it's very poetic for the Yankees.
And of course, all of the management people said, thank goodness this is over, because it takes so much away from your mental preparation of it. And certainly without Jeter now, you're looking for something for the Yankee people to kind of cheer about, and they certainly had something last night. Any other comments on Rodriguez?
I would just say that I find it interesting that of all the greats that have played for the Yankees, that Alex Rodriguez and Derek Jeter are the only two who have ever hit 3,000. in a Yankees uniform.
That is interesting, yeah.
I find that interesting to
Well,
me.
I think it says a lot. I mean, even what we were talking about before, that, no matter what the controversy around it, he put the bat on the ball 3,000 times. And I mean, that's incredible. And, a needle in the arm isn't going to add that much athleticism to it, because if it did, they'd have a way bigger issue with steroids
We'd
if
see a
it
lot
made it
more
that
people
much
do
better.
By the way, we've got about a minute to go, but a quick comment here. The Pirates didn't get the ball get the bat on the ball at all.
God.
As Scherzer comes up with a no-hitter. 289 guys have done this. He hits a batter, puts one on, but again, they get the fly ball to end it. A great game for him, though.
Back-to-back great games. In the last 2 games, he struck out 26 guys and only gave up 1 hit in back-to-back games. So pretty dominant. Most dominant performance I've seen in my time watching baseball.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and some controversies come out about him hitting the batter as well. There's now some evidence saying that he was too far into the plate and that kind of thing. So it'll be interesting to see if that comes of anything, or if it's just, some sore losers, or not losers, but, some guys being upset that he didn't do it. So it'll be interesting to see if anything comes of that, though, because it was an incredible game for him.
It wasn't. Ashton, Chris, Travis, thank you so much. Another great show. We appreciate it very much on our last call and right here on the Sports Bar. But before we close, I'd like to invite you, of course, to contact us with your comments. You too can do that by going to www.watchapptv.com. And until next time, thanks for joining us on the Sports Bar. I'm Sam Smith. Have a good week, everybody.